Good morning, everyone. Can we all hear me?
Yes, can I hear you? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Can you all see me as well?
Yeah, I can see you.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome each and every one of us to another session of the OVIP 2021. I am Oriname Akeredolu, and I'll be your moderator for today. Today's session promises to be really inciting and interacting as well. Topic for discussion, international trade and commerce, is to be handled by one of the key members in the international trade and commerce team, Ekene Nwoye. Ekene Nwoye has wealth of experience in international trade and commerce. Her vast knowledge has made her travel around the world practicing international trade and commerce, and I hope during the course of the session, we get to tap from this knowledge and as well her experience. The ground rules have been stated severally, it has been reinstated. I want to again reinstate them. Please turn off your mics, turn off your videos until you are being asked for your opinions, or you have a question for the moderator or the facilitator, or you have a general comment and you are being pointed at. That's the only instance where you can turn on your mic and your videos. And when you are done speaking, you turn them off. I wish you all a very interesting session. Do your tasks when necessary and ask the relevant questions as well. Over to you, Ekene.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to yet another session. I hope you can see my screen. Comment in the chat box if you can. All right, that's good, thank you. I welcome you all once again to yet another session. And like he has said, this is international trade and commerce. Unlike the way you are used to this session's beginning, I'll be beginning this session with a little game of 5 minutes. I hope you all can cooperate with me. So the first game would be upwardly competitive. The first game will be guess the word. Okay, a word will appear, a letter actually will appear on the screen right now. And you tell me one word within the international trade sphere that begins with that letter. The moderator will pick whom to answer, and you have just 3 seconds to give us a right answer, and then we move to the next word, or the next letter. Hope you're ready. Okay, let's begin. The letter F. Who can give me a word in international trade that begins with the letter F?
Ojo Emmanuel, you have 3 seconds to answer. A letter in international trade that begins with F.
Foreign trade.
Foreign trade. Well, that was a smart one. Nice one, Ojo. Nice one. The next letter, the letter B.
Godson Okoli.
Bilateral trade.
Wow, you guys are on fire, right? Nice one, Godson. The next letter, C.
Omolefit Boluwatife. Omolefit Boluwatife. Turn on your video and your mic. Okay, I'll call on somebody else.
The next person.
Kimafa. Wesley Kimafa.
I can see some answers in the chat box already though. I see currency, I see competitive advantage. I will give it to Favor Iremia, right? She said currency. Correct, Favor. So we'll move to the next game quickly. This one is two truths and one lie, okay? So at least a couple of phrases will appear here. You single out the lie from the truth, and you have just 3 seconds to give us the right answer. Let's go.
I'll be reading the question first because I believe 3 seconds may not be enough for we all to read the
All
questions.
right, sure. Make it as fast as possible. Thanks.
All right. Number 1, in-court terms are not mandatory. Number 2, currency difference is a problem in international trade. Number 3, the AFCFTA regulates free trade worldwide. Yunusa, read 1. Point out the lie.
Hello.
Yes,
Sorry.
I can hear you.
Number
Yeah.
1 and number 2. Number 1 and number 2
No,
are
the
the
lie.
true.
The lie, there's just one lie. So point out the
Number
lie.
3. Number 3 is the lie. I don't
Number what?
think.
3.
Number 3. Yeah.
Okay, good one, everyone. You got it.
Thank you.
The next one.
This is the second edition of the OVIP. Omaplex is hoping to be a tier 1 law firm. Omaplex head office is in Abuja, Nigeria.
The lie real quick.
That ball,
Number
Abdul.
2 is the lie.
No, not for you, Yunusa.
Oh, sorry.
Not for you, Yunusa. Thank you very much. You can turn off your video.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That ball, Abdul Rahman.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
That is number 2.
Okay.
Number 2.
One of them.
Is that what he said?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, nice one. Nice one, Dapo. Omaplex is not hoping to be a tier 1 law firm. Omaplex is a tier 1 law firm. Very keen attention. Nice one, Dapo. Nice one. So we'll be going to the next, and this will be the last one. It's just an emoji tale, right? So for those who have not been able to participate in these games, we just give us an emoji that best describes how Omaplex virtual internship makes you feel thus far. An emoji. So over to you, moderator.
You can do that on the chat box. Just give us an emoji from the chat box.
We just need 2 persons. Thank you.
Okay, I can see Nikita Sony, Olise.
Yeah, I can see a lot of
I can see a lot.
and they are all positive. I see the laugh, I see the dance, I see the muscle, I think the peace sign, right? I see the angel. That's nice. Very, very nice feedback. I'm glad you guys are enjoying.
See the love face and the love emoji.
Yeah, I can see the smile, I can see the love. Nice. Someone is thinking. Are we making you ponder, or are you still trying to wonder if you're actually enjoying the session? Anyway, I'll leave that to you. So we are done with this. Let's move on to international trade proper. I hope you are ready for today. So we'll go on with the training objectives for today. So by the end of today, you should be able to have a good understanding of international trade. You understand the relevance and problems of international trade. You will be able to know and understand the forms of international trade, trade protectionism and trade liberalism juxtaposed. So you should know the difference of trade protectionism and trade liberalism by the end of this session. You should understand how Nigeria has played a role in international trade sphere thus far and how our plans going forward. Then you know the things to know when facilitating international trade transactions as an international trade lawyer. And lastly, you will get to understand the services an international trade lawyer can offer. All right, let's move on. So quickly, what is international trade? I'll let you get your feedback. As you all know, this session is going to be interactive. So what is your perspective on international trade?
Nikita Sony, I can see your hand is up.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. I think international trade is a trade which happens across the border of the two countries. That's
Nice.
the short answer.
that was short and actually clever. Nice. One last try, please. What is international trade?
Ike Nika and Naga.
Good morning, Mar.
Good morning.
Okay, international trade deals with the exchange of goods and services among nations of the world.
The exchange of goods and services among nations of the world. That's brilliant. Nice one, Nneka. Thank you. Thank you all for your contribution. As you can see on the screen, we have comparative advantage. We have goods and services meets international market. We have bilateral agreements. We have import and export. All these things are what you think about when you hear the word international trade. So what's international trade? International business encompasses all commercial activities that takes place to promote the transfer of goods, services, resources, people, ideas, and technologies across national borders. It's like a trade of, we're not just talking about goods here, we're not just talking about resources, we're talking about even people's ideas. That is international trade. When an idea leaves a particular shore and is planted in another shore, when an idea leaves a particular country and is planted in another country, international trade has happened. We have another definition here. It says international trade is the exchange of capital, goods, and services across international borders or territories. It's the exchange of goods and services among nations of the world. So you can see you'll give a very, very short but insightful answer to my question. So I would have loved to talk about comparative advantage, but we'll meet that going forward. Goods and services meet international market. I'm sure you understand what it means. Someone gave an answer during the game, some bilateral agreements. So I believe you have an idea what it means. So I won't talk about that right now. We'll move on to the next slide. So why is international trade relevant? Can I have your perspective on why you think international trade is thriving? I mean, nations of the world can decide to trade within their own borders, but why is international trade a big thing? It must be relevant for some reason, and I would like to hear your ideas. Anyone, please.
Sneha Kumari and Gostam Nwazi. Sneha Kumari, you are starting.
Yes, good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. I think
Good
international
morning.
trade is relevant is because no nation, I mean, no country, no single country in this world is, sorry, sir, there is a network issue in my part.
Can you come again? I didn't get that. Thank you. You said no nation,
Yes, ma'am.
what?
Yes, ma'am. No single country in this world is self-sufficient, and
Okay.
it cannot satisfy all the needs of its people, and hence
Very true.
yes, ma'am, and hence it is very necessary to trade the things which their people want to from the other country or other nation.
Nice. That's a very nice try, Kumari. Can we have the other person?
Gostam, please.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Time? I
Good
can't hear
morning.
you. Good
For me,
morning. You said?
Gostam, I think you have network challenges. I would suggest you move to a place with a better network connection.
Yes. Why we call someone else, please? So
I
I'll stay
see
back at home.
Nikita, your hand is up, but you've
Yes, sir.
talked before. You've talked before, so I'll call on Ade Wanlan Quadri.
Good morning, sir.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
I think why we need international trade is ability to relate to other nations in order to share what we have and also get what they have. Because a particular country is not dependent on its own. We have to relate to others in order for development of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that
good morning.
amazing try. That was an amazing try. So, why is international trade relevant? And you're all correct for the persons who gave their contributions.
Austin, can you please turn off your mic?
Please mute your mic. Thank you.
If you are not talking, please turn off your mic and videos.
I'm the only one talking, so
Thank
just
you.
my mic should be unmuted. Thank you. So international trade is relevant because as we've all come to realize, nations need each other. Okay? No one nation is self-sufficient so as to have everything they desire at every time. So for example, if Nigeria is vast, if Nigeria is a vast producer of apple, of course, there'll be a season when Nigeria's weather will be bad for the production of apple. And if Nigeria must eat apple, Nigeria must get apple from a nation who at that time can produce apple. So that is why international trade is relevant, because nations need each other. We have itemized opportunity costs, comparative advantage. I'll explain these two terms simultaneously because one gives respect to the other. So what is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is what a nation will have to forego to create or to produce something. What will it cost a nation to utilize an opportunity? Okay, and comparative advantage is what you can produce from the little you forgo. For example, using that apple scenario I gave earlier, if Nigeria is a large producer and seller of apple, and we have very little capacity to produce wheat, right? Our opportunity cost, of course, will be wheat, because we'll have to forego the production resources we'll put into producing wheat so that we can maximize the production of apple. While wheat is our opportunity cost, apple is our comparative advantage and also our absolute advantage. So that's why nations, whenever international trade is relevant, because no one nation has everything. You will have to forego the production of something that you know you are not great in producing, so that you can sell and produce something you know that you can create in large quantity and develop profits from. So we also have competition. We all know that good competition is healthy. If a nation will have to sell just within themselves, maybe within its own borders, it will not benefit from enjoying the benefits of competition in a global scale. Take, for example, Nigeria being one of the nations that produces oil. We have to compete with other nations that produce oil. So, for example, if a nation that doesn't produce oil will want to buy from Nigeria, right? Nigeria, knowing that there are other competition, there's a competition out there, it gives the nation buying the opportunity to enjoy a reasonable price. So competition serves both the nation producing and the nation buying. So that's why international trade is relevant, the ability to enjoy global competition. Then we have access to capital and great returns on capital through foreign direct investments. So because of international trade, we have foreigners who come into the nation, into Nigeria, for example, and Nigeria benefits through these investments. Of course, they will have to forego some things, give them some incentives, but indirectly or directly, Nigeria still benefits from foreign investment. If your mic is unmuted, please. Thank you. So, why? Excuse me. What are the problems of international trade? Who can give me an idea of what they believe are the problems of international trade? Problems of international trade, anyone?
I see your hand, Ojo Emmanuel, Olise Judith Jade. Two of you, please.
Difference
Ojo
in
Emmanuel
currency.
first. Thank you.
Difference in currency.
Difference in currency. That's an amazing try. Someone else, please.
Olise Judith.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, good morning. I think one of the major challenges will be the difference in currency and then difference in trade policies across the countries. Sometimes in terms of bilateral trade and multilateral trade, the policies are not favoring certain countries that want to engage other countries on the trade platform.
Very brilliant answer. Thank you. I can see that you read the material that was put up. Very nice try. Thank you all. So cultural differences, currency problems, legal protection issues, and foreign political climate. These are prevailing problems of international trade. Let's talk about cultural differences real quick. One nation, of course, will have a different culture from that of another. So, for example, if my nation is that okay, we forbid the consumption of red oil, for example, and Nigeria, that is a producer of red oil, want to sell to me, they cannot, obviously, because of cultural differences. Some markets are automatically shut off. Let's take an example of nations that are very Islamic. Producers of alcohol or beer would obviously not thrive selling in that nation. So cultural difference is one of the problems of international trade. We also have currency problems, consistent currency devaluation. For example, a trader who maybe in Nigeria, who was able to import, for example, a container of shoes for 50 million naira in 2017, right? Will not be able to use that same 50 million naira to purchase a container of shoes. Why? Because of consistent currency devaluation, currency issues. One nation's currency will, like for example, dollar is of course when we're talking about hard currency, we talk about dollar, we talk about euros, we talk about pounds. So if you are trading in with your naira, when you are comparing your naira to your dollar, you understand the issues that would arise. We also have legal protection. Some nations want to protect themselves from undue advantage or from undue competition. So they set up certain tariffs, certain quotas. They make the political climate for investment very stifling. All right. So these are one of the problems every nation would have to face when they want to be involved in international trade. So what are the forms of international trade? Real quick, can I get your input on what you believe are the forms of international trade?
Olu David, Bridget, Aziaka. Olu David first. Olu David, kindly turn on your mic and your video and respond to the question asked.
Can someone else try if he's not available? So we save time.
Bridget. Bridget, please, can you give your opinion?
Okay.
Favor Iremia, want to hear your opinion. I can see you texting on the chat box, but want to hear it.
Yes.
What's going on? Why is nobody responding? Can we all hear me?
Yes, sir.
So
Nikita Soni, let's hear your response.
Can you try? Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. I think there are two forms of international trade, three forms actually. I'm not sure about the third concept, so I'm going to mention only two forms: export and import form of international trade.
Try that again. You said export, import, and what?
And one last concept, I'm not sure about it, so I'm not going to mention it.
Well, that was a fair try, but no, not technically. You are describing what you described was a way under a particular form, right? But not what the form is termed in itself. So I will just go on to it since we're having problems having it.
Hello.
Hello, who is that?
Yeah, for the forms of international trade, we have direct exporting and then we have the foreign licensing.
Nice. Who's just spoke, please? Who spoke, please?
Francis.
Francis, okay, nice try, Francis. Nice try, Nikita. So as you can see, one of the forms of international trade is direct exports and imports. So what's direct export and import? Is international trade simpliciter. That is a nation exporting something it has a comparative advantage on into another nation, or importing something it doesn't have into its own nation. So that is just direct international trade as we know it. It's the simplest and most common form of international trade we have. Soliciting orders from foreign countries for goods and services that are made in that country. For example, Nigeria, we import cars, right? It's international trade. We also have the second form of international trade, which is foreign licensing. And what is foreign licensing? Foreign licensing is a system where a nation buys the intellectual property, okay, enters into a contract with a company existing in a foreign country so that it can obtain the intellectual property of that company and operate in its own nation as if it were that company. For example, KFC. We all know that KFC is not a Nigerian company, right? But we have KFC in Nigeria. Same thing too with Mr. Biggs. So what that's like a form of international trade. You buy the IP of that company, and then you set up a company, right? A business in your own nation as if it were that company or the original company. So that is foreign licensing. Licensing across nations. That's why you see a brand is popular in different nations. You see KFC in Nigeria, you see KFC in Ghana, you see KFC in South Africa. Just one KFC that started in the United States. That is also a form of international trade. So we move on to trade protectionism and trade liberalism. What do you believe is trade protectionism, please? Can we have a contribution? What is trade protectionism? Oh, I see a contribution here about Coca-Cola. Yes, of course, Coca-Cola is also like foreign licensing. Thanks. So can we have an idea of what is protectionism?
I think somebody is trying to ask a question here. She's asking, I think it's a he. He's asking for the difference between foreign licensing on one hand and franchising on the other hand.
There's really no difference, right? Franchising and foreign licensing is basically the same idea, okay? Just giving different terms, different names. Franchising also means buying the intellectual property rights of a country so that you can operate in your own nation, intellectual property right of a company in a different country and operate in your own nation. But when we're talking about the world of international trade, it's not termed franchising, it's termed foreign licensing rather. Do you understand? So it's basically the same idea, just different terms because of the community in which they operate. When we're talking about international trade, we're using the word foreign licensing. But when we're talking about corporate law or different or just general terms, corporate law or something, we use franchising. But it still means or still gives out the same idea. So can we have your view on what protectionism is?
I think your question has been answered, Abdurrahman. Deborah Marshall and
I didn't hear that. On the meaning of protectionism.
I was talking to Abdurrahman, the person that asked the question. I said, I hope the question has been answered. I'll be calling on Deborah and Iki Nika to answer the difference between trade protectionism and liberalism.
Yes. Nice.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I actually
Can you turn on your video, please?
Okay. I'm having difficulty with that. Oh, can I just I think I have a difficulty with that. I wanted to give the definition on trade protectionism. Can I?
Okay.
All right. Trade protectionism is a policy that protects domestic industries from unfair competitions from the foreign ones. So they're like policies, like for instance, we have the WTO and other organizations, but they actually protect domestic industries from unfair competitions of other foreign industries.
Okay, that's a nice try. Nice try. I see a try here in the chat session. It says trade protectionism protects the heavy duties or tariffs or import, protects domestic industries that produce equivalent goods. Yeah, same thing. Same thing. You guys are right. It's a very fair try. Trade protectionism is just that principle, right? Or that idea a country puts in place to protect its domestic industries from foreign competition. Before the World War II, trade protectionism was a grand idea. Every nation to itself, right? Every nation wanted to. If we don't have what you have, we might as well just work with what we have, right? Even if it's just a few persons that can get it. But after the World War II, it became clear that international trade would be a very amazing way to foster world peace. So trade protectionism is just an act by a government to impose quotas on imports so that it protects its local companies from foreign competition. So there are different types of trade techniques. We have tariffs, like I said, we have quotas. What is tariff? Tariff basically just means tax, right? A nation can protect its domestic industry by imposing tax, heavy tax on the importation of a particular item, right? So for example, if it will cost Louis Vuitton just it cost Louis Vuitton 200 naira per a pair of shoe to import a container of shoes into Nigeria. Louis Vuitton might as well just stay wherever it is, right? So tariffs is just like heavy tax on importation so that it reduces the amount of importation. Then we have quotas. Quotas is just like a restriction on the amount of a particular foreign good that can come in. For example, Nigeria can place a quota now because it wants to favor the local markets or the local producer industry of local shoes, right? It places a ban on the amount of foreign shoes that can be imported. For example, if Nigeria usually imports 3 containers, it reduces it to just half container. So that by the time the half container is exhausted, everybody has no option but to buy locally made shoes. So that is like a way to protect local industries from foreign competition. So we have government commercial policies and local government legislation. This is like the non-traditional technique, right? So local government policy and government legislation is basically the same idea. It's like putting policies in place to restrict international trade. Okay, policy can be through maybe just bilateral agreement. Okay, I just have this agreement with just this nation. It is not multilateral. I don't want more persons. I just want to sell and receive from one nation. It could also be embargoes, by placing embargoes on the importation of a particular item or the sale of a particular product. Do you understand? So that is trade protectionism. But like I said, because of the gruesome effect of the World War, nations began to, they recalled back, right, and tried to come up with reasonable and workable steps that can foster world peace. And that's when trade liberalism became a grand idea. What is trade liberalism? It's basically the removal and reduction of barriers. Okay, so if a nation knows that it depends on one nation for food or for a particular item which it desires. Of course, going into war with that nation would be a foolish idea. So that was what brought the GATS, right? The General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs and Trade. It was because of the onset of the World War, and it's this same trade liberalism that has given birth to WTO, World Trade Organization, as we know it today. World Trade Organization is like the successor of the GATT. Okay, the GATT came first, and then we had World Trade Organization. So World Trade Organization is now like a global. It's an organization that has like gives this global phenomenon of what trade liberalism represents. It has been able to engineer multilateral agreements, bilateral agreements among nations, generally fostering world peace through consistent trade within different nations. So the WTO has some primary features. We have multilateral agreements, like I said. It's like an agreement between different nations. For example, 10, 12, 30 nations can agree that within themselves there will be a reduction of tariff or no tariff at all. Okay? We also have binding tariffs on all members. So, for example, if there are 50 members of the World Trade right now, it's just an example, and all the nations decide, okay, within ourselves, we'll only impose 1% tax on the importation or export from each other. It means if Nigeria and Ghana are in this WTO, Nigeria cannot now sell over 1% to Ghana just maybe because it wants to spite Ghana. Okay, it's like a binding multilateral agreement, and binding tariffs are like one of the ways of the WTO is able to enforce trade liberalism. We also have the idea of most favored nation. It means that there is no nation that is favored more than another. So if there are, like I said, an example, 50 nations in the WTO, right? All 50 nations will be treated the same way. All 50 nations must have the same tariff, must have the same quota, must have the same free trade agreement. Do you understand? So one nation will not be made to enjoy undue favor or advantage more than the other nations. So we'll move on to international trade in Nigeria. So Nigeria is actually a big player when we talk about international trade. We have been able to have enter into certain bilateral agreements and come up with certain organizations to help us play in the international trade sphere. We have the first option here. We have the Nigerian Office for Trade Organization. This is like an agency that's in charge of negotiating trade agreements and investments for Nigeria. So we have an entire organization that's in charge of negotiating trade agreements. What this organization does is to review impending agreements to know how Nigeria can benefit from it and whether it will be beneficial for Nigeria to enforce these agreements, to ratify them. So we also have Nigeria also is a member of the WTO. As you all know, the chairman of the WTO is also a Nigerian, Dr. Ngozi. You see, the issue of joining WTO, sometimes it does appear as if it's a problem for a nation, right? How can a nation allow itself to be exposed to that much foreign competition? But foreign competition is good, and I believe Nigeria has also been able to enjoy from the benefits of foreign competition. So Nigeria is a member of the WTO since January, actually. It has been a member since January 1995, and it's ratified the WTO agreement in 20th January 2017. Also, our intellectual property rights protection Act, right, is also in line with the TRIPS, that is the agreement that facilitates and engineers intellectual property right protection worldwide, like when we're talking about the WTO sphere. Okay, so our Intellectual Property Rights Act is similar to the TRIPS. And this helps us to engineer foreign direct investment in the sense that if a nation that is also a WTO member knows that, okay, Nigeria's intellectual property right covers it or protects it from undue theft of its intellectual property, of course, to be encouraged to want to invest in Nigeria. We also have Nigeria is also has like a bilateral investment agreements with 31 countries, 15 of which are already in force. The country has a double tax treaty with 13 countries and is a signatory to 24 investment-related instruments and 9 memorandum of understanding agreements. These are like immense, intense, and encompassing agreements. So Nigeria also has understood the benefit of international trade and has gone into different double tax treaties to ensure that, okay, if someone decides, if a foreign company decides to invest in Nigeria at the moment, it will not be taxed in its country and taxed Nigeria. Okay, so Nigeria is also Nigeria is also a party to the African Growth Opportunity Act, which is a US trade act that grants products from 14 sub-Saharan African countries, including Nigeria, duty-free access to the US market. So what does it mean? So because of this African Growth Opportunity Act, Nigeria can actually export some things into the US market duty-free. Isn't that amazing? So for some of you who are wondering what Nigeria has done thus far to be able to partake in international trade, this is just a handful of them. Nigeria is also a founding member of the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States, that's the ECOWAS. And through this ECOWAS, has also been able to establish certain, what's the word? I'm trying to look for the term. Free trade agreements, thank you. Certain free trade agreement within members of the ECOWAS, so that from one ECOWAS state and country to another ECOWAS country, there is a free trade. You understand? I can sell to you and I enjoy very limited or little or none quota or tariff. You understand? So this is one of the ways Nigeria has been able to facilitate its play in international trade world. We also have Nigeria is also a member of the African Continental Free Trade Agreements, the AFCFTA, that just came into force January 1st this year. And although the AFCFTA is not fully operational, but of course you can see that it has, if you have gone through that agreement, you will see that it has interesting avenues. It opens a wide market for African countries to be able to sell and also gain from themselves at little or no cost when we talk about taxation, that is tariffs. So we have like zoned areas, free trade areas, right? Where if your goods come in or go out, they enjoy little to no tariffs at all. So of course and Nigeria is already putting in place certain trying to open up its borders and tighten up security. Well, we know how that's going, but the idea is that we are trying to put things in place to ensure that we are able to participate and gain very well from the AFCFTA. So I can see certain comments here. Or is it a question? Someone said, okay, Nikita actually said Nigeria has the fastest growing economy in Africa and the highest GNP on the continent. To be honest, I don't know, I'm Googling it, but I'm seeing positive things about Nigeria. Of course, there are positive things about Nigeria, okay? When we talk about international trade, Nigeria is actually doing its best to participate and partake and also gain from international trade. But we all know that because of COVID-19 that struck the world last year, and some nations are still, including Nigeria, still trying to recover. If you look at our gross and our net profit, when we're talking about gross profit from the first quarter of last year to the first quarter of this year, you can see that there was a decline because of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. But Nigeria consistently tries to engage in the international trade sphere and also gain from it. But of course, there's still left a lot left to be done when we talk about participation in international trade, because when we're talking about security issues and encouraging foreign direct investment, Nigeria is practically suffering in that aspect because of the insecurity issues. Foreign companies are not keen on investing in Nigeria. You don't see so much foreign licensing like you would see. Like just I think last month we learned that Twitter made Ghana its headquarters. And Nigeria, like there was a rage. There was a rage on Twitter. It was unbelievable for some persons, but of course, when you look at the security issues right here and in comparison to Ghana, well, you can understand why. And then with the Twitter ban already in place, you can say it was quite timely. The decision to the headquarters of Twitter in Ghana. So, what do you do, or what are the steps you can take when you are planning to facilitate an international trade transaction? So I'd like to hear, it's on the screen though, but I would also want to hear your input real quick. What are the steps, or what do you think you should put in place when you want to facilitate an international trade transaction? Of course, as a lawyer. Can I get your input, please?
I'm calling on Abubakar Adiza and Adediji Obadofin. If I call on you, please turn on your video and mic.
Unmute yourself.
Somebody is asking you to repeat the question.
What is the question? Okay. Okay, I see you at the Lama. Okay, what I asked was, what are the things you need to put in place if you want to facilitate a successful international transaction? It's on the screen actually, but I would like to hear your undiluted, rather your diluted opinion.
I called on Abubakar Adiza.
I'm here.
We can't hear you clearly, Abubakar.
Connection is terribly bad.
Can someone who have a better connection attempt this, please?
Yep. The connection is poor. We cannot hear you clearly. Please turn off your video and mic. I'll be calling on Olise Judith. Your hand is up. And Okeke Miracle. Olise Judith first, then after you speak, Okeke Miracle next.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah. I think basically, if you need to facilitate an international trade, first off, there has to be a standard contract.
Okay, sure.
There has to be a standard contract that captures the terms of the trade. If it's a trade that has to do with technology, for instance, you have to collaborate with NOTAP, to bring in certain clauses that will not eventually affect Nigerians when the technology has come in. And then the different agencies that, coordinate certain aspects of trade. If the transaction has to do with TSC, for instance, or any other person, and then licensing for the trade if it's a trade company that intends to come and do business in Nigeria, you have to consider things like their expatriate quota and some other licenses that are important and part of the transaction. Thank you.
Very, 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 very smart try, Olise Judith Jade or Jade. Sorry. I can see some interventions here on our chat box. Abuba, Dabo Abdul Rahman said, the most important thing to put in place is the protection of local producers, manufacturers, so as not to turn the country into a dumping ground. Well, yeah, when we talk about understanding the existing bilateral agreements, okay, I want to believe that's the angle you're coming from, okay? And someone says, bilateral and multilateral treaties that reflect interests of participants and nations. Of course, you have to consider that. You have to consider understanding how you will benefit from a bilateral and multilateral agreement. Even if you don't know about it, you won't benefit from it. That's the truth. You cannot gain from what you hardly gain from what you don't know. So let's move on. Export and import licensing. Of course, when you're talking about facilitating international transaction in Nigeria, you have to make sure your export and import licenses are intact. For you to export, you must be licensed, okay, as an organization, as a company. So if you are the lawyer facilitating an international trade transaction, you have to make sure your client is properly licensed for export or for import so as not to have issues with when you are trying to clear yourself at the customs. So for the exports, we have the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, and this council is in charge of granting export licenses for agricultural commodities and manufactured goods. Okay, then we have the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, and this one is just this organization or agency grants export licenses for extracted goods like oil, all these mineral resources, all these extracted goods, right? Then for the imports, we have the Standard Organization of Nigeria through its SANCAP program. And it's the foremost agency when you're talking about granting import licenses, okay? But then we have other agencies, sub-agencies like NAFDAC. NAFDAC also grants import licensing when you're talking about things that relate to health or drugs. We have NERC. NERC grants import licensing when you're talking about importation of products that have to do with the power sector. NAT also grants import licensing when we're talking about agriculture, right? Then we have DPR. DPR also have to grant import licensing when you're talking about oil and gas and stuff like that. So you also now have to consider the applicable treaties and embargoes. Like someone had read this, I think yes, treaties. She said you have to consider what you can benefit. When you're talking about treaties and embargoes, we are not talking about the existing agreements, multilateral agreements, bilateral agreements. How can you gain from them? Or it's going to be very, very detrimental for you to find someone to import or to export your goods to, reach the border of that country and realize that your goods is actually banned there. You know, you've already paid for freight costs, shipping costs, paid for customs, paid for all that. So you have to put all these things in mind. So as a lawyer facilitating international trade transaction, you have to understand these things. You have to be able to know them. If your client already tells you, okay, this is what I have in mind. This is a company from the US has reached out to me to supply this. You should be able to understand the existing treaties and embargoes and how you can gain from them or avoid them so as you can guide your clients appropriately. We also have the Incoterms. Incoterms are like international commercial terms, right? These are like non-binding terms that facilitate easy commercial agreements. So it affects things when we talk about like the shipment, the insurance, documentation, clearance, all those things. So you can choose a particular term. Like I said, it's non-binding. But if you decide to choose a particular term, Incoterm, and apply it into your contract, it becomes binding. But on its own, you are not mandated, like where it is on its own equal terms, like something like a compendium of internationally agreed, it's like best practices, right? So you choose a particular practice. For example, you decide that okay, I am the importer, right? I'm the seller, he's the buyer. I bear the insurance and shipping cost. And decide to pick that term and impute it into your contract. You become bound by it because it's already part of your contract. So you have to, as a lawyer, you have to go through the legal terms, discuss with your client, and know the best term that best suits his or her circumstance, so that you can advise them and also impute it in your contract. All right, then we have standard contract. Of course, you cannot do without having a standard contract. And you must, when you're talking about standard contract, you must have your product clearly outlined, the quantity, the price, the payment terms, mode of delivery, transfer of ownership, right? All these things must be clearly outlined and defined. Else, you're just having an empty contract and definitely setting your client up to fail. So we also have the HS codes. The HS codes is like a series of numbers, right, that classify goods. Okay, for example, you have a code for leather shoes. You have a particular code for wool. You have a particular code for cotton, particular code for crude. Okay, these codes are like, it's just like a classification that helps you identify. It helps with the custom process, right? It helps you identify the product and helps you assess the particular import or import duty that is levied on that particular product. So you have to understand the HS code, the particular HS code for the goods you are trying to import or export. Because if you don't know it, your goods will get cleared though. For example, if you identify the wrong code and it's time for your goods to get cleared, you identify the wrong code, which is customs. Of course, you are bringing into the nation a good that is not identified, properly identified in your bill of lading and all that. So you have to know, once you've been briefed by a client on on the supply or the importation of a particular good, you have to be able to identify the HS code that HS code apply to that particular item, so you can address your client accurately. You understand the import duties, the taxes you have to pay, so your client will not be caught by surprise. He has already planned. You know, when we were talking about import and export, we're talking about something that is capital intensive. So you must be on top of your game every step of the way. Then we have the trade financing. Okay, the trade financing is, of course, it's open. The client can decide to go through any system of trade finance. But as an international trade lawyer, you have to advise your client appropriately. We have the open account method. This is payment after goods have been received. So if your client is supplying, let's say, 200 barrels of crude, right, to a country in South Sudan, okay? If you're choosing to go for the open account trade financing, it means you are agreeing that you, the seller, would receive your payment weeks after the goods have been supplied. And of course, at that point, you bear the risk. Okay, you bear the risk of selling. And because you bear the risk, you have to now make a plan for your trade credit insurance, because a situation might occur where the buyer refuses to pay or wants to pay but delays in making payments. And you know you need money to operate. So what do you do then? So if you're because of, and the truth is, ordinarily a business will not want to opt for an open account system, but because of competition, if for example you want to supply maybe 40 containers of wrapper, right, to a nation, and that nation also has another company that wants to supply that same product you have to offer. only that that company is willing to take payment after delivery has been made. Of course, you will not be forced to go for an open account system. So sometimes the situation of things when you have competition and of course poor economic system forces people to go for an open account system, but you have to make sure you have your trade credit insurance so that you don't suffer a bad debt. So we also have the letters of credit. In this case, the buyer's bank bears the risk. And what is a letter of credit? It's just a letter from the bank of the person who is purchasing the item from you, stating that once a proof has been shown that the customer, that's the person buying the goods, have received the item, the monies owed to be transferred to you. Okay, so we also have payment in advance. People do enjoy payment in advance actually, and payment in advance occur when you are the only supplier. The competition is really poor, so a company is willing to pay before they get the goods, right? And in that case, the person paying, that is the buyer, bears the risk. We also have factoring. Factoring is a system of payment where, for example, you want to supply product to two companies, right? But you only have the funds to transport to one, and you are hoping that the money you get for that export, you use it to export the other. But of course, because of competition, you chose to go for an open account system. What can you do? You can factor, and by factoring, you sell. It's like you get a company that buys the account receivables. That's the money you are expecting to receive. So they pay you as if the company, third party, pays you as if they are the ones receiving the goods you are supplying. They pay you, of course, at a discount. So when your buyer now pays, instead of paying to you, your buyer pays to the third party company. So it's like a way of financing your an international trade transaction. So you have to understand these things so you can advise your client appropriately, know what is best applicable to your client's situation and advise them appropriately. Then you also have ensure your goods get inspected, because truth is when you fail to ensure proper inspection, if you find a way to bypass customs, maybe you pay a heavy fine and you get cleared in Nigeria, right, for exports. When it reaches the US or whatever country you are exporting to, of course, custom will hold it, will impound the goods. So you have to ensure that your goods are properly inspected, especially for importation. Make sure they're all for exportation. Make sure they are properly inspected, so you don't have issues of impounding or issues with customs clearance and others. So the central bank has been able to outline certain pre-shipment inspection agents that would carry out this inspection. We have the Angela International Limited, the responsibility to cover inspection when we talk about the Northwest and the North Central zones. We have the Neroli Technologies Limited to cover the Southwest and South-South zone. So if you're exporting from this particular zone, you have a particular company in charge of inspecting. So they inspect as to quantity, quality, and everything. So you make sure that when it's time for clearance at customs, you don't experience you experience little to no problems. So let's move on. We're already short of time. Let's quickly move on. What are the services an international trade lawyer can do? In short, let me go back. I would like to hear your input. From everything we discussed today, what are the services you think an international trade lawyer can offer? Quickly, please. What are the services an international trade lawyer can offer?
Okay, Key Miracle, you are answering in the chat box. I want you to say it out. And Oyinla Victor. We want to hear your opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Ma. I think the international licensing agreement, like, then the second can also preside over arbitral. The reason is because international law can.
I can't hear you, okay, Miracle. Can you speak out?
Can you hear me now?
Not quite.
Hello.
Speak loudly, please.
Can you hear me?
No. I'm sorry, I can't.
Miracle, I think the problem is with your earpiece. I think
Yes,
that's the
so
problem. You can remove the earpiece and try.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's much better.
Okay. I said one of the roles a lawyer can play in international law is, first of all, he can draft license agreements.
Sure.
The second one is that he can preside over arbitral proceedings. The reason is because in international settle their dispute. So most of them go to the International Center for Settlements of Investment Disputes, like ICSID and other arbitral institutions. So
Sure.
lawyers can also play a role in those areas. And also, extreme cases where cases go to the courts, they can also represent, and they can also advise countries as to rights and liabilities in international trade, and many other roles they can play.
True. Can we get another input on this, please? Before we go?
Dado Abdul Raham, your hand is up.
Hello, sir.
Yes, let's hear your opinion.
One of the major is
Your network is quite poor. I can't hear you. Your network is quite poor.
Hello, ma, can you hear me now?
Barely.
Network is terribly bad. Samuel Uziogui, your hand is up.
Good morning, everyone. One of the things that an international trade lawyer can do is to help clients secure necessary licenses from apt government regulatory agencies.
Very true. Okay, nice try, everyone. Absolutely correct for all the tries. So, what are the services an international trade lawyer can offer? I already listed out a few of them. And the first one we have here is advisory on the selection of viable and profitable markets for exportation. So, if as a lawyer, if your client has a particular product but don't know the market to take it to, it's your duty at that point to research on countries that provide the best possible outcome for your client. And you have to now know, you have to understand bilateral agreements, unilateral agreements, and how to utilize them. So it's not just drafting up the contract. Your job shouldn't start and end there. You should be able to make sure that your client sells and reaps profits. So your work starts even at the incubation process, at the point where he's still trying to understand the idea. You have to make sure you guide him through the process. At that point, we're talking about understanding the countries in which these products can be exported into. We also have the procurement of import and export licensing, and we have drafting necessary agreements for international trade transactions. We talked about that. Legal advisory on the general import/export processes. Some clients actually want to go into it, but they need to understand what is expected of them, how much it will cost them, how much they are likely to lose. So in short, if you get a brief to facilitate an international transaction, make sure you see that transaction from start to finish, all right? Do not just think your work ends at getting a license or ends at drafting the agreement. There is still a lot to be done. The client has to understand this process and has to have confidence in you and your ability to make sure that the process is a success. We also have facilitating trade finance and trade credit protection. Like we already talked about the different trade finance options. You have to make sure that you are able to facilitate it with the best possible advice. Every situation comes with different advice, honestly. Okay, so you have to make sure you are giving the best possible advice to your client. We also have international arbitration, someone already said that, and advisory on trade policies. So you can also, as an international trade lawyer, do you know you can advise your nation, right, on trade policies to rectify? It's also your job. I mean, of course, it's not always easy to land this kind of deals, but when you have the opportunity to, it's your job. You understand the law, you understand the purpose of the law, you understand the causes and effects of each particular principle and clause in any standard agreement. So you can advise a nation on rectifying this or not. So it's all encompassing, really. It might seem like a small deal, but it really is a great deal. So if you are choosing to go into international trade, you must understand that there is a lot to know because we're talking about the world, all right? We're talking about understanding global trade. So let's go through the chat section to see what. Okay, someone has a question. Dabo Abdul, he says, "Ma'am, I have a question. Just as we've discussed about goods and exchange of goods, licensing and contractual terms alike, does all these rules apply to Twitter, Facebook, since they also offer services in their host countries?" Well, when we're talking about apps, I mean, you should understand that for apps, there are licensing agreements that happens on the ground, right? When we're talking about apps, an app would have to ensure that before it is acceptable, you know, there are some apps right now that cannot be accessed in China except you use a VPN, right? Just use Twitter now. Except for those who are able to use the VPN, you cannot access Twitter. So even for apps, there's also an underlying licensing agreement. A nation must have to accept for that app to be accessible because apps also create competition. There is, for Facebook, there is another app in another country that can do what Facebook can do. But because Facebook has given access to global coverage, Facebook has been able to trump that competition. So for example, if Nigeria wants to have its own Facebook, maybe Naira, for example, and it decides, okay, we want to ban the use of Facebook in Nigeria, so as to ensure that that tech company that owns Naira Book can be able to trump or compete against Facebook. So when we're talking about licensing, contractual terms and all that, of course, there's software licensing and all that. There must be a consent, right? The fact that it's just an app doesn't give any app just access to because when we're talking about apps, we're talking about you'll be able to waive some privacy agreement. If a nation doesn't want an app to be able to access the privacy details of its citizens, of course you can restrict that. So for the citizens to be able to use the app, it has to go through the background or the backdoor that is maybe using VPN. Right? So even for apps, it's like a form of international trade because these apps also gain from Nigerians, from usage in Nigeria. So if Nigeria wants to make sure that the money that goes to Facebook will now go to Naira Book, you can make that happen, right? So let me look, see if I can see one more question before we round up. Okay. Someone said they also banned Google in Nigeria. They had guys to delete the whole Adamu Garaba's Crowley app in place of God. That's the truth. When we talk about apps, we know that apps are also subject to government policies and government decisions. Just like Twitter now. I mean, few weeks ago, Nigerians were protesting on Twitter, selling goods on Twitter, selling services on Twitter, selling themselves on Twitter. Now Nigerians can't, right? And if you decide to use the VPN, well, when I tried using VPN, I couldn't see the trends in Nigeria. I was seeing the rest of the books. So you see, even for apps, they are also subject to these policies, right? So let's quickly move on. So I know you'll be expecting your tasks and you might have more questions. So I didn't want to put the task here. So we're already done. You have access to my email. You can send me any question you think you'd like me to help answer. You can reach me through that number, or you can send your contributions to me, and I will try to address them as fast as I could. I will send out your task to your different group leads, and I'll be expecting that task to be spot on, please. I hope I've been able to do justice to this. So please, I expect that the task comes in amazing. So thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for contributing in the session. Have a
Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Ma. It was really an astounding session. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Miss Ikine. That was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful session. I hope we've all gathered a lot from her knowledge and experience as well. By 2 o'clock today, this is a very important announcement. By 2 o'clock today, we'll be having another session. A link will be shared. And the session is basically for our moot and mock trials, concerning the groupings, concerning generally the pattern it's going to take. So I join every one of us to avail ourselves to be available, make ourselves present, and create time for 2 o'clock today. We'll be having a meeting concerning our moot and mock session. Thank you very much. Do have a lovely day ahead, and I expect to see all of us by 2 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.